Hello, in this video I'm looking at this. Oathmark, Battle of Lost Ages. Okay, let's go. So this is Oathmark, made by the creator of Frostgrave. I've not had a chance to play it yet. It's one I've been keeping an eye on quite some time. I was a bit surprised at first how small the book is. I was expecting it to be A4. It's a bit smaller. The front cover, nice artwork there, helps invoke the sense of time period it's going for. Even as a fantasy game, it's a very grounded fantasy. On the back, gives you a small blurb there about what the game is, and a nice picture of a dragon. So, what's in the book? Let's have a look. So it talks about the contest page to begin with. Nice to have that. 192 pages of things in here. Throughout the book, there's lots of really nice artwork and pictures of the North Star miniatures. They look great. And some of the artwork is just absolutely stunning. Really like this sort of grounded fantasy, full colour, full page. There's also some which is, if I can find some, double page artwork. But the artwork is taken from the boxes, or the box artwork's taken in here, should I say, from the miniatures. So if you've bought in the miniatures from North Star Miniatures, go along with this, you've seen this artwork already. And there is a fair bit of full colour artwork in this, which is really helping the game to stand out and really helping to portray the theme they're going for with the time, the setting. I mean, even the dragon, it's not, yes, it's a fantastical creature, but it's nothing like, say, you might be used to with a dragon. And again, then there's a nice picture of the goblins, doing what goblins do best, and just pillaging and rampaging around. But that's another thing that needs to point out on this. There's no sort of good guys, bad guys, or evil, good. It's just that there's no background in this book, in a sense that it's just, here's some generic fantasy races in a grounded setting, and you can make your own kingdom. Because that is one thing that helps this game stand out from the rest, is that you can have multiple generic fantasy races in your kingdom, because you build a kingdom. I'll show you an example. And it depends on what terrain you have is what you get access to. So if you have, say, barons, you can have human rangers and human mounted rangers in your kingdom. Let's say you also have a silver mine. You could have some elf line breakers or some elven warriors. So you can mix and match as you choose, to depend on what terrain you generate for your kingdom. Because I think there are ways to actually roll for what terrain you have in your kingdom. Or you can just go out and buy boxes and then go, right, that's what's in my kingdom, based on what you have. But there are certain ways to build them. If I can find the, bear with me, I think it's before this. Here, yeah. So they're like terrain lists. So you have one, obviously you choose this one or this one, and then the second one you can have two of them. So of the twos you can have two of them, and then of the threes you can have three. So it represents that your kingdom has like inner, middle, and outer provinces. So your inner, middle, outer, and then so on and so forth in extremities. And that's how you can choose to build your force. Or you can just go, I want to build an elf force of X number of points, just using the elf list. And that's fine, you can do that. There's no, you have to have X, you have to have Y. You just build what you want. So that could create some balance issues. But I think it's, given that the game's quite narrative driven, it should balance itself. It's not about a competitive hyper who can win. It's more about, this isn't the narrative, this is a scenario we're playing, this is what the story is we're going for. So that helps sort of rein it in somewhat. So yeah, that's the actual overall of the book. So now I think what I'll talk about is I'll talk about the actual game rules. So with the rules, I thought I'd talk about the first thing that helps the game stand out rule-wise, alternative activation. This allows for great strategic depth of cat and mouse, and it means there's no downtime waiting for an opponent to finish their turn, and it means that you can't be sort of tabled in one go. It allows for more tactical depth, and it also allows for more fairness in gameplay. Second of all, the game uses D10s instead of the usual D6s. This allows for greater range of variance in the unit stats. Fantastic ability, do love that. Also, the units, you have to actually see if they activates. There's no just, right, it's my turn, I activate this unit, it does what I want it to do. You have to do an activation test to see if they'll do what you want them to do. If they fail, they'll just do a simple order. So there's no, oh, I failed, that's it, my activation this turn, this round is over. No, it's just you get to do a simple action and then it passes over to the opponent again. So you don't lose out, but you still have that level of, my units may not do what I want them to do. Big fan of that. Another thing to talk about dice, it's capped at 5 dice. So there's no bucket of dice needed in this game. That's really nice. It does recommend to have one of your D10 a different colour for things like unit champions, if you've got a champion in unit. Unit sizes, another interesting approach. All infantry are on 25 by 25mm bases. So for people like myself who've got things on a 20mm base, that could be an issue. But it does mean that units aren't going to be shoulder to shoulder. There's a bit more space for them. And they're capped at how big you can go. So your maximum is 20 models of infantry, 10 for cavalry, 3 for large creatures like trolls and ogres and things like that. And your unit deployment is set at 5 frontage max. So cavalry and infantry are going to be 5 by 4 or 5 by 2 max, whereas large creatures are going to be just 3 across. I do like that. It makes it more clear cut of what units are and where they are on the battlefield. One really interesting thing that I don't know if people have actually noticed or have picked up on what this actually entails. Your facings change throughout the game. They're taken from the bottom full rank to the top of the alternative or opposite corner of the front rank. So in this case here, a unit of this is 12 models. You don't count the back 2, you count the front 2. 10 rather, sorry, and they've got quite a wide view of arc. Now, if they were deeper units, this would be a bit more shorter, shall we say? So the arc would be different. So as units take damage, their frontage gets bigger and bigger. This helps represent that smaller units or less models, they're more flexible. They can do more than a big block of infantry. So it's a small thing, but it has deep ramifications. That's a nice touch. So what else is interesting in the artwork? Oh, sorry, artwork in the rules rather. I think some of the nice mechanics I do like are in how the combat works. It does have you have to do a table and work out stats, but it seems to be quite intuitive. It's based on ranks in your unit, so even though you're running 5 dice and it's not a model basis for combat, it's like if you've got 5 models at the front, you probably have 5 combat dice, which is the maximum you can have. And then any modifiers are from how many ranks you have, or from if you're charging in the flank, or if you're elevator, or if you've already done an order, or you've disordered this turn, things like that. So a bigger unit is more effective in combat because there's more push of the unit, and the unit gets to fight back as well that you've charged. So it's one-on-one combat. There's no I just charge in, I do my attacks, and then you do your attacks in your turn. So no, I've charged in, so we all attack each other. A big fan of that. I like that sort of. It means you're not guaranteed to have I've charged in, I'm going to win. It's also, oh, I charge in there, I could lose this. Big fan of that. Shooting is pretty much in the same sort of way. Again, it's all based around the unit's defense. So in this, the armor is what I would say it's not a passive armor, it's a static armor. Your armor's always constantly on, and your opponent needs to beat that in order to cause damage. So how it works is you've got a fight value, and that is what you subtract from the opponent's defense value. That's for melee. If you're shooting, you use your shoot value, and then modified by how many ranks you have or other situation you may have yourself in, and it's based on this defense. And if you double it, or is it +5? Yes, it's +5. So if you exceed the target number by 5, that causes 2 damage. If you exceed it by 10, that causes 3 points of damage, or 3 hits, should we say, rather, 2 hits scored. So you can end up doing a lot more damage with just your 5 dice than 5 models killed. I think 15 might be the most, or 60 if you've got a champion. And that leads me on to another great point about this game, is where I can get to characters. So if the way the rules are written, it's given them great scope to distinguish between characters and what their roles are on the battlefield. We have commanders who are there to command units, and they can help your chances of passing activation and also increase your chances of making the unit they're in activate and units around them. So even though it's alternative activation, when you can activate a commander or commander's unit they're in, they can activate other units. So maybe I think like 2 up to their command level. So if you've got, say, command of, say, 2, they can attempt to activate 2 additional units after the one they're in. So that allows you to be able to outmaneuver a player if you've got more units. So that's what commanders do. Then opposite them, you've got champions. Obviously, as the name suggests, they're more for combat. Now they roll additional, it's an additional die. It's, as I mentioned before, a different coloured die, and they get, I think they always do +1 hit, but they score a 10. I think they can then choose to strike down any champion or character in the alternate or other unit of the enemy. Nice touch. And then we have spellcasters, who are there obviously to cast spells and to support. The spells, from what I've seen looking at the back, they seem very sort of support based. There's very few that I cast a spell, it wipes out your units. There's a few what I'd call magic missiles where they will do damage to a unit, but they're not that. They don't look to be that overall powerful. They're there more for supporting units and that sort of tomfoolery they can do. And you will find some characters are a combination of several of these. So you may have, for example, I've seen a champion spellcaster or champion commander, but they're more high-ranking characters, so they cost a lot of points. That's a nice touch in the game. Another thing is, even though it's alternative activation, if an enemy charges you, engages in combat, and you fight back as well, both units then count as activated for that turn. So you don't get to fight and then activate and then charge back in again and fight again. It's like, no, you've fought, you've done your thing. Also, another thing worth pointing out is unit movement. I can find it now. So there's several activations you can do. You can move, which is obviously go forward in this. It's straightforward in this. If you want to turn facing or anything like that, it's a maneuver. It's a separate thing. Because you can do 2 activations, you can do, say, a move, then a maneuver, or a maneuver, then a move. You can even do a double move or double maneuver if you wish. Although, given that one is to pivot, you can pivot 100 and if you can fit 180 on the spot. I'm not sure why you'd want to do a double maneuver, or you can wheel, and then obviously you've got shoot, and then there's simple actions and melee and spellcast, that sort of thing. Another thing I want to talk about is the special rules. There's not many special rules in this game, but the ones they have do seem to give a lot of flavour to the game. There's a fair number of spells. Here we are. Let me just talk about spells. Here we are, so special abilities. Some that have really stood out to me is the way they've approached this period of, it's like I say, it's the Dark Ages, so it's very much about shield wall, and you have shielding as an ability, shielding X. So if you're shielding 1, if you're the defensive player, you can, well, that's someone who's been attacked, whether by melee or in range attacks, you can opt to use your shielding. If your shielding is, say, 1, that reduces the number of dice rolled against you down to a minimum of 1. If you're in melee, it also reduces the number of dice that you would roll as well. So if you use shielding 1, you'd both be capped at 4 dice maximum for your attack roll. That's a nice roll that affects you and affects the attacker as well. And the same is true for, I think, Wild Charge. Yeah, this is for a reroll, but if you opt to do it, the opponent gets to as well. So it represents that you're berserk, you're charging in, flailing around. You're like to hit people, but you also like to be hit yourself as well, because you're not really thinking what you're doing. It's a berserk Wild Charge. Nice little touch. So again, not many special rules, as you can see there. The ones they have do help distinguish the units and give them a bit more flavour. The spells, now this is where the game has quite a few spells. I was quite surprised at the number. So you've got a good list of generic spells, and then there's dwarf spells, elven spells, and human spells, and obviously an orcs and goblin spells, and there's some orcs and goblin spells there. And obviously in the undead book, they have them, and magic items. Not too many magic items. I think there's enough there to give it, but there's not too many of them in the game for you can have them. They're mainly high-ranking characters that can have magic items. There's no magic items for units, so there's no magic banners in this game. On units, you may have a character who's got a magic banner, but no units running around with magic banners. So yeah, that seems to be Oathmark. There's a few issues I've seen with the the game layout. The rules themselves seem fine. There's no problem with the rules. Like I said, the main thing I have with the rule layout is that there's no sort of paragraphs or bullet points being used. At some point we're reading where you think they should have used. I mean, here, for example, this is the only thing use of bullet points, and this should have been used more for the game when showing examples of things like line of sight or how certain things work, or the procedure for certain things like artillery. If it had done in a bullet point format or just in the paragraphs, it would have been a bit easier to flow on the eyes. It's easy to understand, don't get me wrong. It's just seeing a big block of text like this, your eyes can go a bit, well, wander a bit. It's nice to have things in paragraph formats. So yeah, that's Oathmark. I hope to get a game out in the future very soon, because it's a game I'm really eager to play. Does a lot of things right. D10 system, alternative activation with an order system and narrative play, and it allows for very creative lists of being able to mix the generic fantasy races. I mean, who doesn't want to do, here's my elves with their undead and their orcs and goblins allies? I mean, that's a great idea. You can do that. Or even, here's my elves and dwarfs, best friends, which is something that, as a fantasy purist, I'm guessing people are turning their grave and going, oh no, you can't have that. But in this game, you can have that. It's very much, it's your game. Do with it as you see fit. So, that's Oathmark. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment below. As always, I'll catch you later.